Hello and welcome to the Apologists Angle for today, October 17, 2024, an AI-generated Christian cultural apologetic perspective on today's news. This podcast is based directly on the writings of the Christian cultural apologists discussed, but like all AI, it can make mistakes. In the news today, Kamala Harris is set to appear on Fox News with Bret Baier at the top of the hour, marking her latest media appearance in an effort to boost her candidacy and appeal to undecided voters and Republicans who may be souring on Donald Trump. Harris held a rally earlier today in Pennsylvania with over 100 senior Republicans, including former members of Congress. In her speech, she warned that Trump is a threat to U.S. democracy and should never again hold the office of president. The event was notable for its bipartisan nature, with Harris presenting herself as a unifying figure who can bring people together across party lines. She emphasized her commitment to upholding the Constitution and respecting democratic values, drawing a sharp contrast with Trump's divisive style and warnings of a dystopian America under Democratic leadership. Harris also appealed to Republicans and independents who share her view that Trump is unfit for office and urged them to join her campaign. She promised to reach across the aisle and build consensus if elected president. The appearance on Fox News follows a string of media interviews aimed at boosting Harris's candidacy with less than 3 weeks until the presidential vote. In other news, a man who was arrested near a Trump rally in California last Saturday has sued the sheriff who oversaw his apprehension, alleging defamation. The man, Vem Miller, claims that the sheriff knowingly spread false information about him being a threat to Trump's safety. Commentary inspired by the writings of C.S. Lewis, The Tyranny of Sincerity, Kamala Harris, and the Dangers of Unchecked Power. As I observe Kamala Harris taking the stage at her rally in Pennsylvania, flanked by over 100 senior Republicans, I am struck by the insidious nature of tyranny. It is not always the overtly oppressive regimes that pose the greatest threat to our democracy, but rather those that wield power with a veneer of sincerity and benevolence. As I noted in God in the Dock, of all tyrannies, a tyranny sincerely exercised for the good of its victims may be the most oppressive. Harris's message of unity and bipartisanship is undeniably alluring. But we must not overlook the fact that true democracy entails more than merely uniting people under one leader. It necessitates safeguarding minority rights and upholding moral principles, even when it proves difficult or unpopular. The peril lies in permitting leaders to accumulate unchecked power, cloaked in the guise of doing good for their constituents. In my Screwtape letters, I cautioned against the unassuming individuals with white collars and manicured fingernails who do not need to raise their voice. These are the ones who concoct and orchestrate the most heinous evils from behind the scenes in comfortable, well-lit offices. Harris's appearance on Fox News may be perceived as an attempt to appeal to a broader audience, but we must remain vigilant against the subtle machinations of power. In this age of bureaucratic manipulation, where individuals are reduced to mere pawns, it is easy to become enthralled by the rhetoric of unity and progress. However, let us not forget that true leadership demands more than merely assembling people into teams or coercing them back into uniformity. As I argued in The Abolition of Man, this produces only a superficial kind of character, one that lacks depth and nuance. Harris's warning about Trump posing a threat to U.S. democracy is timely, but we must also be cognizant of the dangers posed by omnipotent moral busybodies who seek to impose their will on others under the guise of doing good. As I wrote in God in the Dock, it may be better to live under robber barons than under omnipotent moral busybodies. The choice is not always between good and evil, but often between two forms of tyranny. As Harris appeals to Republicans and independents who share her view that Trump is unfit for office, she must also be mindful of the dangers of accumulating power without checks and balances. Her promise to reach across the aisle and build consensus is laudable, but it must not come at the cost of sacrificing moral principles or minority rights. Ultimately, true democracy requires more than just a charismatic leader or a unifying message. It demands a profound commitment to upholding the Constitution, respecting democratic values, and protecting individual freedoms. As we watch Harris's campaign unfold, let us remain vigilant against the tyranny of sincerity and ensure that our leaders do not accumulate unchecked power under the guise of doing good for their constituents. Thank you for listening to today's episode of The Apologist's Angle. Be sure to come back tomorrow for a new take on the day's news from the perspective of Christian cultural apologetics.